Everyone, my name is Bridgette Bello, and I'm the CEO and publisher of Tampa Bay Business and Wealth. We're a CEO-centric organization that encompasses print, digital events, and now virtual events just like this one. The mission of the magazine has always been and remains to be a part of the solution in this great region, a part of economic development and the rising tide that raises all ships. This conversation is an important one, not only today, but certainly these days. And after reading Brian Butler's story this weekend, Paul Huzar with VetCorps reached out to me and he said, B, we have to do something. I agreed with him and he said, B, you can convene the leaders of this region and the leaders are the ones that can make a difference. Both myself and all of the panelists were touched by the outpouring of your questions of over and over and over again, how can we help? So today, we're gonna walk out of this conversation with tangible things that we can start doing right now, that we can make a difference in this community. Please pay attention to the chat box. While you won't be able to chat with each other, there will be updates during the conversation that will be listed there. You'll be able to submit questions via email and the email addresses will be listed in the chat box. Rick, thank you so much for your partnership and for the partnership. Thank you for believing in this panel and believing in me and believing that this conversation was important. Thank you also to VetCorps, SPC, AC4S, United Way Suncoast, and Sunshine Health for making today's conversation possible. Rick, now I'd like for you to take it away and talk about why you wanted to be a part of this today.
Great, thank you, Bridgette. And it's great to be here with you in this partnership. I'm Rick Homans, I'm the CEO of the Tampa Bay Partnership, a CEO-driven group in Tampa Bay dedicated to public policy and advocacy. And just like Bridgette, I'm very humbled to participate in this important conversation today. Let's be direct. We've all been stunned watching the 9-minute video that shows a white policeman in Minneapolis murder George Floyd by holding his foot on his neck with his hand in his pocket. I think I speak for many people in attendance today when I say that this event has really caused me to view the world through a new filter and to try in a very personal way to better understand how our panelist friends here, Bemetra and Brian and Tonjua and Hugh, and other African Americans might view the same events as me, but very differently. And just here's a few examples. The very partisan debate occurring over vote by mail. To an African American, is this argument to limit vote by mail another form of voter suppression? The incarceration rate for African Americans is 5 times that of white Americans. And to an African American, is that outright persecution? Schools that Black children attend are by most accounts separate and unequal. And to an African American, does this disparity represent a permanent stamp of poverty? And as George Floyd lay on the ground and breathed his last breath, to an African American, did this act represent the historic legacy of slavery and lynching and Jim Crow laws and other forms of racial oppression and injustice? And these are uncomfortable conversations to have, but I think that is such an important part of what we're doing today, is to move past our comfort zone into a new kind of understanding, and to better understand the challenges that our panelists and others face, and talk about, most importantly, how we can begin to take action to change the racial dynamic. In today's newspaper, I read quotes from African Americans in Tampa Bay who joined in peaceful protests, risking their health because they felt like COVID-19 was nothing compared to the oppression that they face on a daily basis. And in the past, quite honestly, I might have viewed those comments as being somewhat rhetorical. With what's happened, however, today, I believe them. And I'm looking forward to gaining a much better understanding from our panelists today of their lives and their views and their perspectives. With that, we want to ask each of our panelists to spend a brief period to introduce yourselves to the audience today and share what brought you here today and some personal insights related to the issue of race relations that will help our audience to get to know you a little bit better. So Dr. Tonjua Williams, if we could start with you.
Thank you so much, Rick, and Bridget, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this very, very important panel. My name is Tonjua Williams, and I'm the president of St. Petersburg College in St. Petersburg, Florida. I'm a native St. Petersburg girl, born and raised right here, and have seen over the years many acts of racism that has changed our lives. That's quite honest. And what we've seen over the past week isn't new to us, at least as African Americans or Black individuals, because it's been happening for centuries. And so I'm here today because I want to be a part of the solution, but also I'd like to be a part of something that's going to truly create change. There's a lot of talk. There's a lot of people saying, oh, I feel so bad, or this is horrible, but it's time for us to do something, because we know a house divided cannot stand. And when you have children come to you to say, do they want to kill me? Will I be alive? Am I worth it? Especially the African-American boys. This weekend, my godson, he said, why do they want to hurt us? And I said, I don't think it's everyone. He says, they don't want to see me grow up. And then you see things on Facebook where people are asking young boys, what do you want to be when they grow up? And they say, I just want to be alive. I just want to be alive. We're a different world right now, and we've got to make some changes, because we cannot live the way that we're living. And in education, I do believe that that is just one of the solutions. There are so many others that need to take place to help African Americans live their dream and get a piece of the American dream. I think we've lost our way, and for African Americans, maybe we never had it. Maybe we never had that chance to be all that we can be. I also am here because as the first African American and Black female to be president of a 93-year-old institution, I felt that it is right for people to see people who have made it, if that's what you want to call it. I don't think that's what it is, but to see that there are opportunities. And my job is to be the way maker for others to come and live their lives.
Thank you, Tonjua. Hugh.
Rick, thank you. I just want to say thanks to everyone that's on the call, and certainly to you all that are making this happen. My name is Hugh Campbell. I'm the president of AC Forest Technologies. We're a tech support firm here in the Tampa Bay region. I am a graduate of West Point, originally born in Connecticut, but served in the military for a number of years. But I decided to make Tampa my home. I have started and sold 3 companies over the years, and I've been a part of the community. I have been on the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm currently the vice chair for the CEO Council of Tampa Bay, and I serve on the board of the Bay Care healthcare system. I wanted to come today. I know this is a very sensitive topic, but it's important. One of the things I wanted to do was, Brian Butler is a very good friend of mine, and as many of you may have read his account recently, I wanted to share a recent example of how I was treated. I don't talk about it very much, but I thought it was important to share my story, because when I do tell people, they are shocked. I was here in Tampa. I had a visitor from out of town. I was being a bit of a tour guide. So I showed my, he was actually the best man for my wedding. And I started by taking him over to International Plaza. And then we went down to the Soho district, and I wanted to show him the Soho district and the entertainment district. I got pulled over by a local police officer, and he asked me what was wrong with my car. I thought that was an odd question, but I said nothing, officer. He asked me to step out of the car, asked me if I had been drinking, which I acknowledged I had one beer at the first stop we were at, and we were on our way to another location. I was very honest. He wanted to do a field sobriety test, so now here I am on South Howard Avenue, pulled over in a parking lot, blue lights flashing, and I'm doing a field sobriety test. Obviously, I passed it with flying colors. No issues with license or registration or anything. I was obviously very respectful. As I was turning to leave, he dismissed me. I chastised myself for getting myself into this type of situation. As I did, the police officer essentially bum rushed me, chest butted me, spit in my face, pointed his finger like several inches from my nose, and was yelling at me at the top of his lungs saying, "What did you say? What did you say?" I had to figure out how I could de-escalate that situation pretty quickly. And I said, "Officer, I was merely castigating myself for getting myself into this situation." And he cocked his head and he said, "What?" And I repeated myself. And he said, "Oh, okay, well, get out of here." And so I would say that your natural reaction when someone rushes into your face would be to push away and step back. And I knew that I could not react in a normal fashion because clearly I had a lot to lose. And I had to figure out how I could de-escalate the situation. And I tell that story and most people are shocked and they ask me, "Well, did you report the incident? Did you do this or do that?" And I often have to chuckle at those suggestions because we simply don't do that. But I also wanted to come here today to also give business leaders, owners of companies, some suggestions on what you can do in your organizations to address some of these issues. I don't have every answer to every question, but as I have run large organizations, both in government and the military, in my own companies, I had some very large organizations that we sold. I wanted to give business leaders some very concrete steps on what you can do to start to change the needle, move the needle. Rick, thanks.
Thank you, Hugh. Brian, if you could.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Bridgette, for having the courage to do this. Not an easy conversation. And I actually wish that I wasn't here. I wish that we were not having this conversation. I'm Brian Butler. I'm the president and CEO of Vistra Communications. We've been in the Tampa area about 13 years. We have a range of clients. I'm also a retired Army officer. I wrote a letter last week because I had slept for a couple days. I've gotten thousands, I should say hundreds, maybe 1,000 or so replies back from people all over the country asking me what they should do, asking me to speak, asking me to talk with their organizations, and some weren't so nice. I wrote the letter because my mom and dad marched in the civil rights movement. I wrote the letter because they raised us to make a difference. I wrote the letter because I saw an opportunity that may have allowed one other person or two other people to just express how they're feeling at this moment. But I had no idea that the letter would take a life of its own and perhaps play some role in why we're doing this today. So thank you once again, Bridgette. I'm a retired Army officer. I'm a business owner. I'm the father of a Black son. Or should I say I'm a Black father with a son. And I worry about him every day. I know this is hard, but it was hard in Selma. It was hard at the March on Washington. But I also know that making a difference starts with individuals. It starts in our homes and it starts in our circles. I hope my son never has to do anything like this. I hope we take advantage of where we are and what's going on right here today, and we move this community and we move this nation forward. Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Brian. And Bemetra.
Good afternoon. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm honored to participate. I am not a native Floridian. I'm the opposite of Brian and Hugh in that I am an Air Force brat. So I grew up in 10 states and several countries and have seen America in all different facets. I've been in Tampa for about 8 years now, and proud to say that Tampa is my forever home. I love it here, and I'm here because I want to be a part of the conversation that makes us better. I spent about 15 years working in financial services and banking. I'd like to say that I have retired from corporate America and have a new career in the not-for-profit sector working with United Way Suncoast. And so I'm hoping that, like the rest of the panelists have said, that we're able to share some thoughts of tangible things that people can do beginning tomorrow to advance this conversation. I also, similar to what Hugh said, I'm just one person. These are my thoughts. These are my ideas. And we're just going to do our best and be direct and honest and have a courageous conversation this evening. So thank you so much for allowing me to participate.
Thank you, Bemetra. Thank you for agreeing to participate. It's been a tough couple of days having conversations with you guys, and I'm looking at myself. My nose is red, my eyes are red, because every time we get on these calls, you make me cry. You guys promised you wouldn't do that today, so I'm counting on you. But Bemetra, since you were just talking, I'd like to talk about your assessment of race relations in the Tampa Bay region today. Have they gotten better over the past 10 years? Are we progressing? Are we doing anything right? Or are we right where we were 10 years ago?
Just again, from my viewpoint, I think that we are working to get better. I don't think that we're where we want to be, and I don't think that we were. There are, the fact that we had 600 people sign up for this today says that we want to be better at this, that we don't want to be where we are today. So in the 8 years that I've been here, I definitely see improvement. I mean, you see, various programs and organizations that are working very hard at this tirelessly on a day in and day out basis. I definitely think that we have a long way to go, but we're certainly not where we were when I moved here 8 years ago.
Brian, let me ask you, we in the last couple of days, we've talked as a group about understanding the why and the what before we start to talk about some solutions. And this is a big question, but we understand the gaps between Black and white America in education, jobs, and income and health and so many different areas. what is the root cause of that? What's the systemic problem there that we have to understand before we can start to fix it?
Thank you, Rick. Rick, I think too often we see the data, but we forget that those are individuals that make up those data sets. When you read about a school in Hillsborough County that's lacking behind the others, I challenge individuals to go in that school and try to figure out why. Or it's just another great slide. It's just another data point that we could talk about. I believe that too often we just simply forget that these are people and that we can do things as individuals to help change the circumstances of these people, of each one of us. We're lacking so far behind, and you talked about earlier about, how many the incarceration rates. I think unemployment rate is probably what, 14% in Hillsborough County right now. I would bet that it's over 25% for African Americans, maybe higher. I don't know if you have that info, but every time you look at those data sets and you see, it's amazing. You look at the COVID rate across the country and you see where those deaths came from. Those deaths didn't just come from just COVID. They came from people that don't have access to good health care. They came from people that don't have access to good jobs and good food. They're living in food deserts. Probably should stop there.
Thanks, Brian. So, Dr. Williams, we talk a lot at SPC about mobility, economic mobility, and it starts with education. It starts with, a very young child with access to our education system. And there was a statement that was put out this week by the Florida Education Association that said that our state's education is separate and unequal. Is that true in your opinion? And if so, how do we fix it?
Thank you so much, Bridgette. And I want to piggyback a little bit off of Brian's comment when he talked about being able to see the people behind the data. A big part of separate and unequal has a lot to do with understanding that these are humans and that we're setting the trajectory of their lives by the opportunities and the access that they have. And many African Americans don't have access to the better schools or the better programs that would help them succeed. And so I would probably say that the divide has gotten even worse with COVID as we add digital and technology pieces in there for achievement. It just further divides the haves and the have-nots. And so to me, being able to value others and train your employees to appreciate people of color, to appreciate people who look different, who speak differently, who have a different opinion or way of movement. When we talk about equity, I don't think we talk about equity in the true sense of the term. It's not equality. It's not saying everyone gets the same thing, one size fits all. It talks about individual people getting exactly what they need to be successful. And in our education system, we don't teach for equity. We teach for numbers, success. Did you pass? Did you not? How many students got this or that? And I think that, like Brian said, we're chasing the number and not the students. And many times our students of color, specifically African Americans, are left behind. And when you start behind the start line, it takes a lot more effort to get through the race. It's almost like a 4x4 race. If the baton is given to you 20 kilometers later, you've got a longer way to go to catch up. And so I think many of us feel like we're really trying to be in the race, but the baton's not being passed to us for us to grab and run. And so we've got to change how we work with our education system and understanding what true equity is. And it's not all about just numbers, it's about people. And I think that we're losing the people behind what we're trying to do. And then access. You've got to provide access. And that means it's not one size fits all. It might mean that Tonjua needs a little bit more help in this area and Susan doesn't. Being willing to be flexible and to train your staff to appreciate and value diversity, inclusion, and equity.
Thank you, Tonjua. Hugh, thank you for sharing, your very personal story with us before. And another question for you, as we're obviously here in the Deep South, and part of Florida's heritage is the Confederacy and the war memorials and the Confederate flags and symbols like that. We have a huge flag flying off of I-75 that was just taken down for a few days, but will assuredly be put back up. And I'm wondering how you feel when you drive past one of these memorials or by that huge flag flapping in the breeze, and when you see groups actively engaged in maintaining and promoting these symbols. Just interested in your perspective on that.
Rick, I will tell you that it's not so simple. So first off, I was raised in Connecticut and on the south side of Chicago, and we were always taught that, the Confederate flag was a symbol of hate and going back to the Civil War. But it was interesting, a few years ago, I was up in Citrus County, and I saw, believe it or not, this sign on a double wide, and it had the Confederate flag out there, and the sign was heritage, not hate. So to me, that meant this thing has become more nuanced. It's not as simple as it was before. There are some people that are proud of their heritage in the South, and that flag is part of it. So I can appreciate that. I get it. I don't think we should change history. If your intent when you're flying that flag is to intimidate, then yes, clearly that's a problem. Nobody wants to be intimidated. But if you're proud of your heritage, I get it. You can't change that. You're proud of that. That's okay. So I think times are changing. Am I personally offended by it? Not anymore. Can it be intimidating? Absolutely. But I think it's become more nuanced, and I think times are changing, and I think you should probably have a conversation with somebody that's flying that flag and ask them what's the intent of that. Are you just merely proud of your heritage in the South, Florida, Georgia, whatever the case may be? Or do you really not like me because of the color of my skin? Ask them. Have a conversation, if that's possible.
So, Bemetra, we've talked over the last couple of days. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say, I hear what Hugh's saying. I can appreciate that, but let me speak for myself. The Confederate flag for me represents nothing but pain. And there are modern day hate groups that use the Confederate flag to advocate their hate message. I don't see heritage. I just see pain. I see pain and I know people use it as an oppressive system to keep doing that. So I just wanted to, I know you want to ask me another question, that's fine, but I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Well, one of the things that you've consistently said over our conversations over the past couple of days is that you don't speak for all Black people, you speak for Bemetra, and each one of you echoed that. So clearly we all have differing opinions on things, and that's okay. What I wanted to ask you is, with limited bandwidth and not a lot of exposure normally to racial tensions, what can we as business owners and leaders do to promote constructive dialogue on this issue? I mean, it's uncomfortable, you know, we've covered that. How do we change that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is finding a way to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. You know, part of being a leader is that you have to have courageous conversations about lots of things. Terminating people, nobody likes to do that. Making a decision to have layoffs. This is no different as a leader. You have to put yourself in a place to get comfortable doing that. The other thing that I would say is, you know, as leaders, as business leaders, if your organization does not have affinity groups, start them. If you do have them, attend them. Go, and not to go and participate, but to go and to listen, to hear what are the diverse employees in your organization saying, what are some of the things that they like about the culture of your organization? What are some of the things they find challenging about the culture of your organization as a minority participant in that culture? Those are two small things. And then the third thing I would say is, you know, there are a lot of great organizations here in Tampa Bay that do this type of work where they will come in and do a diversity, you know, inclusion and equity assessment of your business and give you a roadmap for how you're doing. You know, inclusivity run by Eric Smith does a great job. Community Tampa Bay does a good job with that. You know, bring them in to do workshops for your organization, for your leadership team, for your employees. But I mean, those are three tangible things that leaders can do, you know, really immediately within their organizations.
Tonjua, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Bemetra. Good comments. I would add one more thing. I think it's important for all businesses to reflect what they expect. That means you need to have diverse staff. There are still too many organizations that have not either been able to hire a person of color or have not thought about that. But I think that the only thing I would add is, you know, reflect what you expect. I think you need to have some folks on your staff who are minority, and I think that they need to be in some of the more middle to high level management positions, not just all on one level and the lower level.
Yeah, and Bridgette, I'd like to see if Hugh and Brian have anything to add, because you guys work a lot with companies and in a consulting role, and is there anything additional perspective that you want to add to that?
Rick, I love to add something to that. And actually 4 or 5 quick points I'll make. Number one, we each have to look at ourselves and ask hard questions of ourselves and of our organizations that we're part of. We have to have people in positions at the right places to provide us the best advice possible. And I think somebody said earlier, if everybody in that organization at the leadership level looks just like the person in the mirror, then there is something wrong. We have to look at our circles and the people that we have in our circles that we accept advice and guidance and wisdom from. If everybody in your circle is just like you, then there's probably something wrong. Bemetra said we have to become more comfortable in uncomfortable situations. That comes with practice. We have to focus on our sphere of influence. We can't change all the problems in the world, but we can start with the sphere of influence that each of us have. Whether that sphere is at your dining room table, whether that sphere is in your break room, whether that sphere is on the soccer field where you're on the sidelines watching your kids, you can focus on that sphere of influence. And lastly, we must be intentionally observant. We can walk by things every day and pretend they don't exist, or we can play I Spy. We can put a magnifying lens on it, and we can look at it a little deeper and ask better questions about it in all aspects of all of our lives.
Thank you, Brian. Hugh?
Rick, let me just add, again, we're to the point, here are the things that you can do. So if you're a leader of an organization, I think one of the questions that came in was, how can we support and respect the employees, African American or Black employees in my organization now? So that was one of the questions, and it's very simple. Ask them. So what does that require? That requires you to have a conversation with an employee that you may or may not necessarily have conversations with on a daily basis. Regardless of the size of the organization, pull somebody in your office or go down and see those people and just have a conversation. That doesn't cost money. It may take a little bit of time, but ask them, go talk to them. That's how you can begin to move the needle. Brian said something about the people in your circle. I would challenge everyone. If you hear an offhand comment, joke, or whatever, it's easier to let it slide, kind of giggle and move on. Much more difficult to say, hey, not sure we should be talking like that, or where does that come from? Are you sure about that? I often, when I do my public speaking, I challenge people in the room to go find your local media and ask them, are you required to start every broadcast focusing on the 3 or 4 knuckleheads? And then, oh, by the way, I might have a good news story late in the broadcast. Well, do you have to start with focusing on the knuckleheads? Because I tell you, there's probably, for every one bad apple, there's probably 1,000 others that are not. And they don't make the first 5 minutes of the news. So contact your local media. Ask them, do you have to start with the negative? Can you put more focus and light on the positive? And as you said, Brian, I will repeat that. When you're making hiring decisions, do you always consider the people you know, the people in your circle, the people you worked with before? Take a little extra effort. Try to find some diverse candidates, because there are some great people out there that are waiting for their chance, their opportunity. Maybe 3 or 4 people on this call will give somebody a shot. I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you. Bridgette, to you.
Yeah, so I was going to ask Bemetra, how would you address the people who are ready and willing to support Black Lives Matter, but they will not kneel during the national anthem?
I would say everything is not mutually exclusive. Support what you want to support in the way that you're comfortable, right? The point of Black Lives Matter is not to be exclusive of anyone else. You don't have to say things like White Lives Matter, because they're treated as if they matter. So you don't have to say that. So the point of Black Lives Matter is, you can see what happened in Minneapolis, and not only was there a tragedy, but to Hugh's point, then it gets put on a loop over and over and over again. We don't even do that with dogs and cats and our pets. We treat them with respect. And that's what we're looking for, is to be treated with respect, not to be treated the way we would treat a rodent or a raccoon or a possum. It's a life, but it's a life that can be stomped out if you need to. If you feel unsafe, you can stomp it out, and that's allowed. And that's the whole point of the Black Lives Matter sentiment, is to be treated with respect in the same way that everyone else is treated with respect.
Hey, Brian, let me ask you, what's your perspective on this, the underlying issue of why we have seen so many cases of white police officers killing unarmed Black men? I mean, building a little bit on what Bemetra was talking about, is this a systemic issue, or is it a case of some bad apples and some bad hiring decisions that can be sorted out? How prevalent is that, and what can we do about it?
A lot packed in there, Rick.
Yeah.
We have a systemic issue of racism in this country that we haven't faced. So with that systemic issue of racism, we have created an environment which allows people to do things like that, which allows people to believe that they can get away and it's going to be okay. Because if you look at the number of those officers that have been charged, it's a very small percentage of those that have killed Black men over the last, I'd say 50 years. So until we confront the larger issue and until we confront the politics and the policies of the issue, we may continue to see this. There are some bad apples, but overwhelmingly, the law enforcement folks that I come across are good people. They're good, honorable men and women trying to do their job every day. But there's a small percentage of them, just like the rest of our society, a small percentage of other people that believe they can, so they continue to do it.
Rick, can I jump in here?
Absolutely.
I think it's important to say that, police officers have a tough job, right? It's kind of like being an IT company. But seriously, they have a tough job and they have to deal with a wide variety of things. But these incidents that happen over and over and over again, it would be very helpful if our friends here on this call and in the community, when you see that incident, you shouldn't be silent about it. George Floyd was murdered very slowly. And everybody knows that's wrong. So you shouldn't be silent about that. As Brian just said, the vast majority of law enforcement folks are fine people that put their lives on the line every day, and they have a very difficult job. However, in those instances when it's very obvious that a crime has been committed, they should stand to justice just like everyone else.
Thank you, Hugh. Bridgette?
Yeah, so we want to come away with tangibles, and you definitely have given us some things that we can start doing right now. But one of the earlier questions I asked is, have we made any progress over the last 10 years? And if somebody were to ask us that 10 years from now, what kind of specific metrics should we be using in our personal life, in our businesses, in our communities to see whether or not we're making progress? How do we measure that? And I'll open that to everyone on the panel.
I would say, like, if you just, sorry, Brian, I'll take a personal piece. Brian was talking about spending time with people that don't look like you. I think that would look like, a picture from Facebook or social media of what you did for the weekend. And everyone in the picture doesn't look alike, right? And you're doing something social, you're with people from different backgrounds, right? I know we have a lot of business people, so I'll use a golf analogy because I've probably got a lot of golfers out there. You would never play a round of golf with just your putter and try to make every shot with your putter. Different shots require a different club because that club can do something differently for you. That's the whole point of diversity, right? In your personal life and in your business, right? One of the great things is you have a business problem that we're solving, and the supply chain people see it a little bit differently than the marketing people, and a little bit different than the finance people, a little bit different than the sales people. Our lives should be the same way, right? Our personal lives and our professional lives should reflect that same diversity in thought and in action. And quite frankly, Bridgette, that will lead to success.
I definitely agree with what Bemetra just shared, and taking it a little bit further, I would say 10 years from now, I would like to see more minorities with education, not degrees necessarily, whether it's certifications or short-term trainings, to be able to climb the economic mobility ladder, to be able to live their lives. Fewer people in jail, fewer people without health care and they're healthy and able to live, people who have houses and able to buy property and do things that they have not been able to do, access and opportunity where there's fewer roadblocks to success, where there aren't things set up to keep people from moving forward, but pathways that are built to help people move forward. And I know we have some of those in different pockets. We do. America does have opportunities for people who really want it. But when you have a household with generation after generation after generation of underemployment, undereducation, lack of resources and support, and not the emotional help to help you move from one level to the next, it is very difficult to dig yourself out of that. And so something has to change on the outside. And I think something that would be evidence would be more educated individuals, people not living in poverty, folks getting more jobs and being in a higher wage bracket than we are at now. If we're still in the same situation we're in now, it's because we're doing the same things that we've been doing. And this isn't the first conversation. This isn't the first time we've had these types of crises. I think technology has blown it up, where things are being seen and made aware of much quicker than before. And so for some people, it feels like this is brand new. For me, it's not new. We've seen it and we've witnessed it, and in many cases experienced it. And so I think that seeing people respect lives, people respect people, especially African Americans and people of color is important, that we're valued. And so bringing that to the table, that this is an important thing to do, that we mean just as much as everyone else, is critical. And that's going to be the only way we're going to be able to jump over this hump. And that's just a Tonjua Williams opinion.
Mhm.
Brian or Hugh, you want to add anything to that?
So
Go ahead, Brian.
I agree with everything that Bemetra and Dr. Williams said, but I want to put a really basic spin on it. People do business and people hire people that they like, value, and trust. So if we were all in a room together right now, and I asked people to raise their hands, if you raise your hand, if you had somebody different than you at your dinner table over the last week or two. And, understanding COVID has changed a lot of that temporarily. But if you think about that, if you had somebody different than you at the dinner table over the last week or two, if everybody asked themselves that question, the answer is going to tell you a lot. And then in 10 years from now, if we had the same group together and we asked that same question, that answer would tell us a lot.
Hugh, do you want to add something?
you know, they've done a great job. I won't add to it.
You know, I'd like to ask Brian to maybe look at the makeup of companies and how companies are you know, trying to build a more diverse workforce and leadership. Should a company be establishing some goals for the percentage of the workforce, the percentage of management, the percentage of its board of directors that are people of color and diverse, or is it just enough to put in the effort to try to do that, and perhaps one won't achieve the kind of results that, you know, would be truly diverse? How does you've got a lot of business people you know, listening today, and they're here because, you know, we all want to affect change. How do we set some actual targets and structure to do that?
Rick, I think, you know, the government often gives us goals. In corporate America, we shouldn't have to meet those goals. We should establish our own. Each company should take a look at themselves and decide what they can do. You know, a company of 10 people certainly is not the same as a company of 10,000 people, but each company has to look at itself and say, you know, I'm happy where we are. We're doing a pretty decent job with ensuring that our leadership is diverse. But unfortunately, I think too many companies, even right here at Tampa Bay, I pull up the websites of lots of companies and lots of organizations, and I look at their leadership teams. There's just not a lot of companies that have people in senior positions that look like me. What are we saying to the young people that have, as they look up, when they don't see anybody that looks like them? So I think each organization, each company has to make their own decision and then just do what's best for them. Sadly, some may decide they're just not going to do it. Or they're going to study it for a little while longer.
I think it's simpler than that. I think that companies should look like their customer base. Companies should look like the community that they serve. And we don't live in any homogeneous communities. The clients are not homogeneous. And so the leadership and the advice and the decisions that you're making for your company is, to me, it's just that simple. It should look like the client base. It should look like the communities we serve in.
Let me just add to that. You know, my perspective is you're almost silly not to. You guys have heard the stories of some company rolling out a product, and they'll name the product something, and in the Latin community, the word means something completely different, and that product flops. So you know, if you want to be successful, I think, you know, diversity is a great tool to get you there, and you'd be silly not to. I mean, look at, you know, Bemetra's right. Look at Tampa Bay. This is an amazing community of people that come from everywhere. Why would you not want to take advantage of that and increase your market share and penetrate those places that you're not selling to? Why would you not want to do that? To me, it's silly not to. You don't need metrics, and you don't need the government telling you to do the X, Y, and Z. It's just, why would you not want to take advantage of that? I can't tell you how many meetings I've been in where people say, you know, well, I never really thought of it that way.
Can I add something else to that?
Absolutely.
At my company, we have a very, very diverse team. but it's intentional. It's intentionally diverse. And I created it to be intentionally diverse because I love getting the points of view from other people. I love hearing what they have to say. I love pushing them a little bit to speak up in our meetings. I love hearing that, understanding their background and how they got to be there. And it's so rewarding for me, which also means it becomes rewarding for our clients, because we come at it something from a point of view of not just the way Brian thinks, but the way that others think, and the backgrounds and experiences from so many others. So that's fun to me. And I enjoy it. And I hope we always have the same point of view about that.
So I want to interrupt you really quickly. We're at our time, and we had said that we would stop at 5:30. But there was something that Hugh said yesterday that really made an impact on me and really made an impact on the rest of the people on my team, and that we've repeated probably 10 times in the last 24 hours. So Hugh, hopefully you remember what I'm talking about. And I want to make sure that that message gets through before we start losing people.
Yeah, and I think I know what you're talking about, but just something very, very simple that we can take away. With the George Floyd incident, part of the tragedy was, what if one of the other officers had merely gone over and said, "Hey man, that's enough. Get off his neck." So as you go back into your communities and your businesses, organizations, all those things, I would challenge you. Are you going to be that one person that says, "Hey man, that's enough"?
And I can't think of a better way to say thank you to you guys for this incredible conversation. You didn't make me cry. I made it through. But you certainly did make an impact, and we were watching the numbers, and we were staying strong. You guys reached a ton of people with this message today, and I hope we come back 10 years later, and I hope we can say that we had somebody different at our dinner table, and I hope we can say healthcare has improved and education has improved. I'm going to make it a personal mission to make sure that I'm paying attention to those things moving forward, and that wouldn't have happened without you. And I have to thank again VetCorp, SPC, AC4S, United Way Suncoast, and Sunshine Health, Rick and the partnership for being a part of this and keeping us on task. Brian for starting the conversation over the weekend with a powerful, powerful story. And I just feel wonderful that almost 600 people in the Tampa Bay region wanted to hear how they could help. And I think that says a lot about where we live. I think we are in a very blessed community of people who care. And so I think it's incumbent upon all of us to continue to have these uncomfortable conversations and continue to be the ones that say, "Hey man, that's enough." So thank you all for being here. Anybody else want any closing comments? Please feel free.
I just hope that this is the first of many conversations like this, that this is not a one-time thing. So thank you for having us, Bridgette.
Thank you. This has been amazing.
Thank you, Bridgette.
Thank you, Bridgette. This community needed this.
Bridgette, the only thing I want to add is that it felt really good to have the outpouring of questions of how we can help, and
Yes.
they wanted direction and guidance. So that's fantastic. This organization, this community is wonderful.
And you guys gave them tangible things. So let's go. Let's watch them go and make a difference.